as I kind of got older, and hit 40 and thinking about, hey, look, what type of life do I want to live now? Because I can't just rely on my youth and general athleticism to kind of get out of this stuff. And just asking for the help, I think is tough. I probably should have done it 5 years earlier. People say that like, oh, my clothes fit better. Like that's true at first, but because of the pace and everything that you're losing, that's only true for a few weeks. And then it's like, okay, actually I need a new wardrobe.
Josh, welcome, brother. Really appreciate you hopping on with me today just to share your experience with the program, with working with me, your weight loss process, your fitness results, all that type of good stuff. And so if we just kick it off, I'd love to hear kind of about you, what you do, a little bit about your life. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on, Jimmy? Thanks for having me. Quick background, started my career in accounting. So, the big four accounting world, which is, just that grind, lots of hours, all that kind of stuff, addicted to coffee and eating out. Effectively, I'm doing project-based sales. So working with a lot of strategic project initiatives and stuff like that, working with the office of the CEO, CFO, CHRO, prep work, a lot of system implementation work.
A lot of business dinners, entertaining, travel, things of that sort, right?
Yeah, of course. And so, if you think about, my buyer being CEOs, board members, CFOs, generally C-suite individuals, they're busy. And so to get face-to-face time with them, a lot of times it's at dinners, at sporting events, at big seminars and stuff like that. We're trying to meet them where they are. And so a lot of times that's travel, because obviously those folks are super mobile. There's a lot of these companies have spaces all over the globe. So a lot of times I'm traveling to them and taking them out golfing, taking them out to events, taking them out for dinners and things like that. So a lot of that stuff is
so really good food, lots of booze, makes it real easy to get in shape, huh?
Super easy to stay on the wagon. Well rested, well fed. Lots of fun.
And then tell me about your personal life outside of work and how that is kind of like relevant, maybe some challenges that poses in terms of your fitness goals, if any.
Yeah, I think, personally, I live in a city without family. So there's a lot of travel to go see family. And then when you're home seeing family, there's a lot of eating and stuff like that. Mom wants to spoil you when you're home. I'm sure most of us, younger men can appreciate that. And, married, I've been married for 5 years now. Obviously, date night with the wife, once or twice a week and that takes you to nicer restaurants and out to do stuff, drinking nice wine and things like that. So there's a give and take in all of this stuff.
Okay. So definitely some travel, some entertaining, things of that sort. And, refresh me, how long was it, that you were kind of not putting your health as like a top priority and things kind of started to slip?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I think, when I was younger, I played, football at school and I played rugby. I, did boxing and kickboxing and things of the sort. And so it was just easy to have that into your schedule. I think that once I started my accounting professional career working towards your CPA, there's a lot of hours of work. There's a lot of study and it was just piece by piece, it wasn't like this long thing and I just let myself go. It was just a lot of sacrifice here, a lot of sacrifice there. And again, addicted to coffee to kind of power through and stuff like that. And before you know it, I went from, maybe 212, 215 when I was playing football, maybe 220, and ballooned up to 260.
Yeah. And besides obviously just, knowing each other personally and maybe seeing some of my LinkedIn posts, was there anything specifically that you're like, no, what, I want to get back in shape here. I want to get back to where I was.
Yeah. If I'm being perfectly honest, there were some health issues with family members. Things that, I don't know if I would say that weight is directly related to, but certainly there's coexistence between, that excess weight and some of the risk factors that come along with things like cardiovascular disease and cancers and things of the sort. Just thinking, as I kind of got older, and hit 40 and thinking about, hey, look, what type of life do I want to live now? Cause I can't just rely on, my youth and general athleticism to kind of get out of this stuff. It was, I think it was a culmination of some of those things. I had also been experiencing a little bit of health issues myself, just basic stuff, things like with my skin, injuries that had occurred in jiu-jitsu, which was kind of like the pastime that I've adopted as I've gotten older. And so it was just a reminder, like, hey, look, like you need to take care of this body if you want to be able to do the things that you enjoy.
And before working together, I believe we started, what was that, like last November?
Yeah, I believe so.
Something like that, right? Had you tried other things, like in terms of diet or training? What had you done before?
Yeah, for sure. I had tried, I've read the magazines and the books and all that kind of stuff. And so I had tried a lot of this stuff. I think. Yeah, exactly. Right. So you're doing juice cleanses, you're doing intermittent fasting,
okay.
Water fasting, just beating yourself up in the gym, almost like you're taking out this, frustration health in the gym. And it was just, all that stuff can work for some, but for me, it wasn't working. It was too intense. Like we talked about earlier with my lifestyle, it was just too hard to maintain a water fast while you're, taking a group of private equity guys out for golf and dinner.
Good luck.
And it's the same thing in the gym, right? Like, there's nothing, when you can't hit your 2-hour workout that's going to like drain the life out of you.
Yeah.
And you've only got an hour. It's like, okay, well then I guess I'm skipping it. Right. And so it was hard to maintain this like all in approach, with the lifestyle that I was living.
No, that's a really good point. Like making that shift from all or nothing to what's actually going to be realistic, what's actually going to be sustainable. Like you don't need the 2-hour workout. You just need to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So many guys, especially high performing types, get caught in that mindset. If I can't do a 2-hour, I can't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Right. If you're in volume training on the bench press for like, the next 3 hours or something. So yeah, it was really easy to tell yourself, hey, I can't do this. I don't feel right. Oh, this is tweaked. I didn't sleep right. This hurts or something like that. And, it's easy to make an excuse when again, you've got to be in the gym for 2 hours plus and go through like a crazy regimen.
So, I mean, I'd say that might even be the biggest thing, like shifting out of an all or nothing mindset into like actually just doing something consistently, no matter what it is. But what do you think were like the 2 to 3 biggest changes? Like what made the real big difference for you in the way we approach your health and fitness in terms of the nutrition, in terms of the training, in terms of whatever comes to mind that actually moved the needle for you?
I think that there's a couple of things, right? Like one is that it's like we said, there's a threshold to being able to achieve, the milestones that we were laying out for myself, right? Like, hey, get your protein, take your steps, hit the gym consistently. Like those thresholds were put to a place that I could achieve them from, I think, where I had set them for myself. One of the big things that would have made them achievable was time frame. There's a simplicity and a flexibility to something like, hey, get your protein, right? Like, even if worse comes to worse and I knew that I had a dinner, we had talked about stuff like that. And it was like, hey, well, for lunch, you can do XYZ. Here's things on menus that are high in protein.
Yeah.
Limit how you eat that, right? Like, hey, just start with the proteins, right? Just to put yourself in a position to win. Have some Greek yogurt, like things that are super easy to go out and grab from a store to have for lunch, throw in the fridge at work or something like that just help you stay away from, sitting at a computer screen, realizing you're starving and then eating a huge burger or sandwich or whatever it is that I would normally go to. So I think that was a big one.
So just like that little bit of planning to make sure, one, you're getting ahead of your hunger. So you're not eating, let's just say dumb shit.
Yeah.
But then also knowing how to, budget the beginning half of your day if you got a big client dinner coming up. And is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And again, easily obtainable because I can walk into almost any grocery store, really elevated corner store and get some of the stuff that we're talking about as opposed to, needing to meal prep on Sundays, and bring your lunch with you or something like that and bring the meals with you. When again, you're on the road and you just can't do that.
Yep. Okay. So that was some big unlocks from a nutritional perspective. What about from like a training perspective or anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah. I mean, like the steps was like a kind of, come to Jesus moment to some extent. But I think that, like you're on the treadmill trying to run for 30, 45 minutes, and you're just like absolutely killing yourself on there. But, your knees sore, your ankles sore, your hips sore, your back sore, like, whatever, just because, again, like you're starting this journey and you're not necessarily at 100%. And just getting the steps was something that I could work towards. You could break it up, so it didn't all need to be in one gym session. It was relatively simple. It didn't completely mess with your day. And it was something that you could work towards building so that I could always be like, hey, look, I've got 20 minutes. Let me just go, walk around the block, take this call on a quick walk or something like that. Just, get.
Don't even need to take off your dress shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And you're not pouring sweat. You don't need a shower after, all that kind of stuff. So it was just something that was a little bit easier. And it was just a reminder like, hey, like the key here is to move, and that's what you should be focused on. And so, and again, like we said, it was just easier to hit. It's easier to, the hard part about the training side of things is getting in there. And I talk about this with friends and all this stuff, is getting in there on the days where you just don't want to do it. It's really hard. Right. And when the threshold that you're trying to achieve is like, hey, I just need to walk. Like, like that's a lot easier than, oh my God, I need to beat myself up and run like 5 miles, 7 miles or something like that on the treadmill. So
yeah, it's like looking at a little tiny hill, except for instead of like this big old mountain.
Yeah, right? Exactly. That was a big thing. And then even on the weightlifting, like, like when you talk about guys like me that came maybe from playing football, when I was in school and at university, like the weightlifting was so intense, and it was like, it drains you, and it beats up the body, and while it makes you strong, sometimes you're like, I feel like I'm doing more damage than good.
I know exactly
what I do for a living, and where my body is. And so just, bringing that down to like, hey, look, here's the goal. The goal is to, maintain a healthy physique, to be strong for the things that you want to do, but you don't necessarily need to, get in there and do all the powerlifting stuff.
Not a linebacker anymore. You don't really want 550 on your back.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So, I mean, those are some massive things, massive changes, or anything else that comes to mind?
I think that sleep, is another big one. I think that, the wearables and all that kind of stuff also help with that, because, there are some folks that struggle to fall asleep, and as a result, they feel like they struggle with sleep. I never had that problem. I stay pretty busy, and I've always been able to fall asleep. But if you fall asleep after having, a couple bottles of wine at a dinner and having an espresso at the end of it, and you feel like you fell asleep relatively quickly.
You're like, I got 4 minutes of REM.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And quality of sleep. The game tape doesn't lie. That's one thing that I will still say to you from football. And so, just understanding the importance of that, having that reiterated, understanding how that relates to all these other systems that you're trying to deal with, was a big one. So, the sleep, the movement, and the diet, like those three things all strung together were all, pretty influential.
Okay. And so what kind of results did you get from that? I should have refreshed myself before this call, but if I remember correctly, I think it was like 26, maybe 27 pounds in the first 4 months, and then you've been able to maintain that.
Yeah.
Is it something like that, or?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, like up front. Cause I think, when we first started chatting, I was pretty much at about 260. And so it was down as low as I think 213 at one point. And when people, and we joked about this, when people say that like, oh, my clothes fit better, like that's true at first. But because of the pace and everything that you're losing, that's only true for a few weeks. And then it's like, okay, actually I need a new wardrobe. So, it looks over the same, like my pants are folded over and I'm trying to go to a business meeting or something like that. I look like I borrowed.
The hidden cost of getting back in shape, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. It's no joke, man. It's no joke.
They don't put on the brochures.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty bad. But luckily, you hit, those, whatever, Black Friday sales or up in Canada, we've got, Boxing Day sales and you go get yourself some new clothes. But
we should get Taylor. We can refer people to.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's got to be part of the program.
Comprehensive package.
Exactly. Don't forget it. It's no joke. So I went from like barely fitting into a 38. And I remember going and getting a suit and the tailor's like, yeah, you probably should be closer to 40 or something like that around the waist. And now it's, 34, but I can't forget about because it might fall off a bit. So it's been great, from that standpoint, and same thing with the dress shirts and stuff like that. You don't feel like your buttons are going to pop off when you sit down in a meeting or anything like that, which has been great. But I think, more importantly, and again, I think that I go back to some of the trackers. If you're able to track what some of that stuff looks like, it's pretty unbelievable, because I think, you're talking about your resting heart rate dropping 10 to 15 beats per minute. Obviously your recovery scores, on the heart rate variability stuff, go up a significant percent, which is awesome as well. And your VO2 max, all that stuff that really correlates to, a long, healthy life. All of that stuff gets absolutely, shot through the roof. And then, like I said, I was suffering from skin issues and some other things, and all that stuff clears up pretty significantly. So there's a lot of stuff I think that came from losing that weight. And then, obviously you feel better and your confidence is up. People are commenting on it. You can, there's a part of you that does feel nice regardless of.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't think that you need it, but you hear it and it's like, yeah, that doesn't feel like the worst thing.
Awesome, brother. And so, like, if you were to rewind, talk to yourself back then, or talk to someone who's maybe in a similar position now that you were in then, what advice would you give to them, or what advice would you give to yourself then?
Yeah, I think the first thing is make the commitment, right? Like, it's the humility that it takes to say, hey, look, I need help with something, because I mean, at the end of the day,
especially as men.
Yeah. Like we're in control of it. Right. And, inherently there's just something like, hey, look, like I can't do this on my own right now. And just asking for the help, I think is tough. It's probably, I probably should have done it 5 years earlier, 10 years earlier. But I think that was nice. The accountability, lean into the accountability that comes from working with someone is great. And it's a process, right? Like, and we had talked about that before, because there are times where it's like, hey, I'm going to mess up sometimes. And, there's going to be events where you have, that extra glass of wine, or you take that extra piece of bread or whatever it is. Like, it's just like, it's not like doing that won't affect the journey that you're on.
Exactly.
If you just kind of stick to it and like, get up and exactly. Get up and get back on it. Right. And that part was, it's just, like I said, it's not all or nothing, right? Like when you're on a fasting and you're supposed to be doing a 5-day fast and you eat on day 2, like you're kind of like, well, I'm done. Yeah, exactly. Right. So, whereas this isn't like that. And so there's the opportunity every day to just like course correct and like, hey, yeah, look, like that wasn't the greatest decision that I've made, but it's not the end of the world. Let me get my steps in. Let me get my protein. Let me get into the gym and kind of keep on this journey. And, those little speed bumps don't knock you off the rails in the way they do. Times.
No, it's a powerful insight, and maybe like one of the biggest ones, right? Because you're going to mess up. It's a process. And this game is all about just getting back on, how quick you can get back on versus like never messing up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's huge. Yeah. And I really appreciate everything you've shared so far. It's been freaking awesome. Is there any like last words you'd like to impart, some wisdom onto your former self or anyone else watching this?
Yeah, I think that, you're doing this journey for yourself, and you're doing it for your loved ones. And so, if some of the stuff that you're doing, means like, hey, look, I've got to, put my treadmill in the office and I'm worried about what people are going to think, or, I've got to say no to going out for happy hour or something like that. Just do what's best for you, do what's best for your family, do what's best for your loved ones, and take care of yourself.
Love it, dude. Love it. All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you hopping on with me today. I appreciate everything you've shared today. Freaking awesome. Cheers, brother.
All right, Jimmy. Thank you, brother. Take care.
Of course.